Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us today's January 2015 National Speakers Association Academy Hangout. We're so excited that you're here today. I am currently sitting not in Denver anymore, but in Chicago, where it's just as snowy, but thankfully really much colder. So when wonderful, that's going to be fun. Also from extremely snowy but fabulous locations, we have Liz Green, who is our incoming Academy Chair for 2016, as well as Neen James, CSP, who's going to be sharing her expertise today about transforming your thought leadership into amazing things for your business. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Liz and Neen. Do let us know if you have questions by typing them in on the Facebook page, putting them on the Google Plus page, sending them by email. We want all of the good stuff so that we can help you get where you need to be in your businesses. Ladies, take it away.
Thanks, gorgeous.
And we are so lucky to have Neen with us. Neen is one of those people that if you get a minute, 2 minutes, 15 minutes with her, your business is going to move forward because she is just that good. So one of the things that I know is really important, especially when you're starting out as a professional speaker, is really thinking about having a business. And I know we're going to talk about the difference between a business and a practice, but having a business or practice versus a hobby.
Right.
And the things that we do to set up having a professional speaking business or practice kind of separate us from the herd of all of the people who think this might be a good idea and sort of do it but aren't making a profit at it.
Right.
So even very small things like making sure that you're not writing checks for groceries out of the same account that you're depositing your speaking fees in. Sort of things are really important to make sure that you're being set up the right way. So that's what we're going to talk about. And you're absolutely brilliant when it comes to getting those ideas in our heads out into the world and bringing us money, which is really important. So could you start us off and tell us what is the difference between a speaking business and a speaking practice?
So we use the word business for everything that we talk about, and yet I believe it's different. Think about a business as a company like Mac, a company like Coca-Cola. What they have is they have a big brand, they have a lot of expenses, and they're kind of like the big freight carrier, and it takes a really long time to redirect or move that when it's on the water. It's like a city unto itself. But I believe that as speakers, that many of us are running a speaking practice, and the difference is this. A speaking practice is like you're the brain surgeon. It's your expertise. You're the only one who can do what you do. And you're like that tiny little patrol boat that can go in and out of the water and it can change direction quickly. It doesn't require a huge investment. So the big differences between a business and a practice. A business is often you with other people, and people might be delivering your intellectual property. You might have a team of people on staff. Your startup costs are higher, and obviously you're going to need capital for that. And what's going to happen is it's not just you, it's others. A practice is where it's all about your expertise. And so when you think about that, it's low startup costs. You get some money, you build a website. You get some money, you print some business cards. If you want to change the direction of your practice, you can do it. Think about if you go to visit the brain surgeon, that brain surgeon, she doesn't turn to her receptionist and say, well, Mr. Receptionist, can you go and do this brain surgery for me? Here's the operation manual, right? Here's how you do it. It doesn't work like that. And so one of the things we need to get clear on between a practice and a business is where we choose to play. If you choose to play as a business, you understand that it is going to be obviously a lot more expensive, but you're going to make different decisions. For example, many people pay or they want to be on television. Right? Apparently we love that brush with celebrity. They want to be on TV. Well, TV doesn't make sense if you're a practice owner. It makes sense if you're a business owner. You see, the only reason I go on TV is because my mom loves it. And so my mom in Australia, she tells her friends that my daughter's on TV in America. And seriously, that is the only reason I do it. Because the reality is, it's a huge, big waste of time. I love the shows that I'm on, but it's not going to advance my business. It's not going to grow my business. It's not financially going to be tied to my target. So understand things like PR, press. You treat them differently when you're running a practice versus a business. And that's important to get a distinction. When you look at things, Elise, yeah?
Well, and I want to say there are are people who come into our profession that already have some sort of business, and they're adding speaking as part of that business, whether they run an advertising firm, or I know people who are headhunters, search professionals. There's lots of people who recognize speaking can drive revenue to that business.
Right.
It doesn't mean that one's necessarily wrong and one's right. You just have to.
No, definitely not. And when you think about some successful people in our practice, I mean, most people would know of Steve Spangler, one of my loves. Now, Steve runs a business. He has a toy company. He appeals very much to those science teachers. He has people who work with him. He has a massive infrastructure. And he also has a very dedicated profit center to the area of speaking, right? But he's a business owner. If you look at someone, a dear friend of mine, Stacey Hunke, who anyone who's going to the winter conference is going to get to meet Stacey. Stacey runs a business. She has trainers all over this country who are delivering her intellectual property into corporations. But she also runs a profit center for speaking, and she's almost developed a practice within her business. What we need to get clear about is what are the decisions we're making and where are we going to invest our time, our attention, and our energy, the money we have. If it's just you, and you only want it to be you, that's a practice model. See, I will never sell Neen James Communications. It's just me. But what I'll do is I will always put away money every year so that in 10 years' time, if I decide I don't want to travel as much as I do right now, then I've put enough money away that I could then have my version of sort of retirement. If that makes sense. I don't know if speakers ever actually really retire, but let's just say that we wanted to. That's what I would do. So for me, what I do is every year I'm putting money away. So I won't ever sell my practice, right? But a business you can sell. Hopefully that makes a difference. For those of you who did the pre-work for our call today, and if you haven't already done it, I encourage you to download the sample chapter of a book I put, Sell Your Thoughts. And I also put this on KiwiLive.com for everyone as well. And so on Kiwi Live, you can see this, but there's a whole section on the difference between a practice and a business.
Right. And that's we have an NSA Academy hub, and it's there for them to find as well.
Perfect. Hey, my good-looking friend Patrick Henry just joined us. That's a good-looking face to see in the day.
It is. And we should say that Patrick is chair of the Academy this year, so he is the big wig.
Well, I would have been on earlier, but I couldn't figure out how to get the cat ears off of my... I had a halo for a while, but it disappeared.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
So, all right, I think we're clear on business versus practice.
Okay.
So what kind of systems do speakers really need to think about setting up?
The first thing speakers have got to do is numbers. You've got to know your numbers. So many people get into this because they want to change the world. Well, that's great. Changing the world doesn't always put money in your bank account, and it doesn't always pay your mortgage. So here's my belief in that. You've got to know your numbers. Every day, or you could just do it weekly. In our office, we track 3 numbers, and I have them on a whiteboard. There are 3 numbers we track, and they are what did we bank, right? So what money went into our bank account so we can measure cash flow. What did we sell? And we have sales targets every single month of how much we need to sell so that I know my calendar will remain full. And then what do we deliver? Now, a delivery day in my practice is when I'm either on platform speaking for a client or if I'm mentoring an executive. They're 2 profit centers in my practice. So what I'd encourage you to do is the first system you need is some way of capturing what are you banking, what are you selling, and what are you delivering. They're 3 important numbers. And then every month, tally those numbers up. And what I would encourage you to do is very, very simply is just write down on a piece of paper how much money do you want to make this year, right? So write that number down. And then write down how many days do you want to work this year. Pick a number between 50 to 200 days. Simply divide that number into what you want to make. And just before I finish, Eliz, Kristen Arnold did a brilliant job in Speaker Magazine this month and wrote a phenomenal article on calculating days. And what you need to do is you need to think about, and if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. Download the Speaker Magazine app to your phone. Download the VOE app. But go and find Kristen Arnold's, one of my favorite articles ever published. The reason these numbers are important is you need to know what's your day rate. Every day you don't get that number means you have to work even harder. So one of the systems in place is know your numbers. track bank sold and delivered, and know your day rate. So that means, what are you going to charge for the number of days you want to work? Because we know we can't work every day. We've got travel days, we've got vacation days, but I really recommend Kristen's article. I loved it. Mary Kelly and her team have done a brilliant job this year with Speaker Magazine. It's
really
phenomenal. So check it out. So the first system I think you need is numbers. What I'd recommend people do is use QuickBooks Online as well. Sorry, you don't have to put your hand up, Liz.
Just for clarification, because one of the things that you track is what did you deliver?
Mm-hmm.
So when you're talking about days, and I know Kristen's article goes in here, but what do you count as a work day? Is that a day that you're delivering, or is that a day that you're working in your office?
No, because a delivery day is true delivery day where I'm being paid for my intellectual property. So that means the keynote. It could be for some of you, you might have a coaching program. For some of you, you might be mentoring executives. For some of you, you might be delivering a half-day training program, okay? But what I'm thinking about is a day where you are being paid to deliver. So banked, sold, and delivered. The only number that I really focus a lot of my attention on most of the time is the sales number, because in our organization, one of the things you have to get super good at and super comfortable with is you need to be able to sell. And that means proactively reaching out, having calls. I call it hustling. Every day I hustle. I have to have at least one phone call hustling every single day, because what you need to do is you need to then grow your business. And I believe sales and marketing are different. So the first system is know your numbers and use something like QuickBooks Online. I have a mobile financial controller, and she goes in and looks at all my accounts. I have someone who does my invoicing. But the beauty of QuickBooks Online, for the small amount of money it costs for the year, it means everyone has access to be able to download my bank statements, and at any time I can go and run reports, my P&L, my client reports. So I highly encourage you, the first thing to do is know the numbers. That's the first system I think people need. Eliz, what would you add to that?
In terms of the numbers, I think that's really brilliant. And doing one of the things that people really struggle with is figuring out what's my fee. And that's a brilliant way to really look at it. How many days do you want to work? What do you want to make this year? Divide that out. That's your fee. And then
you have to understand, though, as a speaker, and I won't be able to talk about fees today, but I'm going to talk numbers. So none of you are allowed to report me to the ethics board, okay? I'm not telling you what to charge. I'm just telling you that there are some tiers, right?
Right.
So and by that I mean tiers of payment.
There could be this kind, too.
It's not that sad. But I think what you need to consider is that when you come into this business, you can be charging up to, maybe $3,000 if you're a new speaker. And there is this tier of speakers who are earning that amount of money, and that's great. Then you jump way, way up, and there's like the $25,000 speakers who are the celebrity speakers, and they have accomplished something politically or in the sports arena, and that is also an amazing aspiration. It's not practical in my life, but there's a gap, right? So then there's this big gap between $3,000 and $25,000. I think what happens is when you know something that's relevant to the world, you can probably get around $2,500. Once you take that relevance and you make it more meaningful by being able to capture it in a way that is different and more meaningful for that audience, you might make $5,000 in your keynote. But once you can take that relevant and meaningful information and you can create models and share with the world your unique intelligence, that's where I think you get between $7,500 to $10,000. Right. It's when, as a speaker, that you're truly a thought leader and not a thought repeater. That's how you get the higher price point. When you look around our organization, you see people who've truly carved out unique intelligence. They've shared it in the world in models. They've got metaphors to support it, and you know that there is so much depth to them. That's when you get the higher fee. So regardless of where you are in your practice, some of you are coming in because you've got big corporate careers and you're switching into speaking. Some of you are using speaking as a marketing distribution for other businesses that you have. So really your fee structure, I can't tell you what your fees are, but there are some natural tiers in our business, up to $2,500, $5 to $75, $75 to $10, $10 to $15. They are natural tiers in our business.
Well, and I think that's a really good framework to help people understand kind of where they fall, because being a really good speaker, being good on the platform, is the price of admission to our profession.
It's not enough.
Right. You
just
have
not.
to offer something better than entertainment.
Yeah, and what you don't want to do is just vomit up everyone else's material. I mean, so often people are just quoting the greats, but I watch a speaker and they're maybe just regurgitating Brian Tracy's brilliance or saying what Zig said, or, you've got to, as a speaker, you've got to find something that is uniquely your intelligence, your experiences, and what you want to be able to do is package them in a way that will make an impact on the world and the people you serve. So it's not about regurgitating everyone else's stuff, it's about creating your uniqueness. Once you get your uniqueness, what you find then is the audience responds so differently. You've got to get good, and you've got to pay for coaching to get good. I'm all for that, right? But you've also got to understand that in this industry, I also believe you sort of have to earn your stripes. When I first started speaking, one of the speakers bureaus said to me, it was going to take me 7 years to truly make a brand. And I said, you don't understand. I am Neen James. I am not going to take 7 years. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to make money. Guess how long it took me to truly run a very profitable practice, understand my niche, get my IP right. I hate to say it, but the late, beautiful, wonderful Ron Tacky was right. It takes a long time in this practice to get clear on what you're good at, what your audience loves. And so maybe you're the exception. And nowadays with technology, you can become an overnight success, but it's about having a sustainable practice, right? You don't want to be the overnight success. You want to be sustainable.
Right. So that's our first step, is know your numbers.
Know your numbers, absolutely. The second system that you need is you need to think about the operations. I believe it's like a triangle. So if you imagine a triangle, and the triangle has 3 parts to it. At the top of the triangle is what I'm going to call make up. This is where you make up your intellectual property. This is where you make up the speech, make up the training program. As a thought leader, you're responsible for make up. The second level down is set up. And this is where I think a lot of speakers are spending and wasting time. Set up is about setting things up. Setting up the job, setting up the appointments with the client calls, setting up all of the logistics for your speech. It's what I call set up. And then the third level is clean up. Now, when you start your practice, by the way, you're doing everything, right? You are setting up the call, you are cleaning up after yourself at a speech, you are making up the IP. When you are new in this practice, believe me, you are doing everything on that triangle. But here's what happens. When you focus on makeup and you bring someone else in to help you with setup, what happens is you can then focus more clearly. So I believe you need to focus on what it is it makeup, setup, or cleanup? If you have to do all right now, you have to think about taking the hat off. So if you're in setup mode, you're setting up calls, you're pounding the phones, you're setting up those appointments to sell something. But if you're wearing your make-up hat where you're making up intellectual property, you want to capture what you know, you want to focus on strategy. What I did very early in my practice was I brought a virtual assistant in, and so I was paying her before I ever paid myself, because I believe it's better for someone to manage my travel, manage my calendar, manage the operations of my practice. For me, it was better to do that. You've got to not just know the numbers, you've got to know the operations. How do you want to handle operations? Now, our whole practice is templatized. We have an operations manual for everything. There is a form for everything. There is a check for everything. There's a checklist for everything we do. Maria, who works with me as my business manager, she has scripted out the email she sends before I arrive, the email after I've left, the email requesting a testimonial. Everything is templatized, so you've got to know operations. Now, I choose to run what I call a very fat practice. There's 2 kinds of practice. You can run a very lean practice, and if you are starting out, I highly recommend that, okay? A lean practice is where you are paying as least as you can. Like, you are very, very focused on the expenses. I choose to run a very fat practice in that I pay a lot of money to help to get other people to help me do what I do. But I didn't do that at the beginning. But I think you got to choose. I choose to run a very fat practice right now, but I had to earn the right to do that. When you start out, you got to run a lean practice. And for a couple of years, I chose to run a lean practice, and I hated it. And because I love to do things a certain way, and I like to. What I believe is the more money I make, the more money I can give away. And so I believe in bringing people into my practice who can help me with my accounts and my invoicing and my travel and all that kind of stuff. So you need to choose: are you running a lean practice or a fat practice? Because that distinguishes how you spend money as well. So you got to know the numbers, you got to know the operations, and you got to know the kind of practice you want to run. Now, I choose to have crazy expensive paper for my business cards because I like pretty things. But that's a lot of money to spend on a stupid business card, all right? So you've got to think about the brand and does your collaterals, do you, the way you dress, the way you arrive, does that look like the fee that you have? And these things are really important in a practice. You've got to have your name.com. As a minimum, you've got to have an email address that is your name at yourname.com, not a Gmail account, not a Hotmail account, not a me account. You've got to show you're serious about this. You can have that redirect to anywhere, but for $4.99 for a domain name with GoDaddy or whatever, let's up the professionalism by looking at the collaterals you use. These are all the details that give away what kind of fee structure you are implying.
Absolutely true. Absolutely.
It's Meredith. Hello, beautiful girl.
Excellent. Do you guys have the day off of school? Or is it? Oh, I guess it's later there, isn't it? So, all right.
Meredith had a 2-hour dental appointment today, so we let her take the day off.
Oh, how very nice. So, first thing we need to set up is knowing our numbers.
Mm-hmm.
We need to understand what we're doing with our time, and I will tell you all that Neen made a huge difference in my business just sharing that with a tip about dividing out my day in chunks of 15 minutes, because I honestly can say I am doing all of it, and there are parts of it I don't like, and I will put off because I don't like it, but they're very important things to do.
Yeah, I think the key is exactly what you said. For those people who have seen me speak, my commercial product is Folding Time. And so I talk about how do you get twice as much done in half the time. And one of the tips to that is 15 minutes, because I believe no one has an hour anymore. So what you want to think about is as you're building your practice, can you segment these activities, especially if you're doing it yourself, into 15 minutes? For example, do all your invoicing in 15 minutes. Set up your sales calls in 15 minutes, right? If you have to book your travel, set it up in a 15-minute window. Because what you need to do in our business is you've got to, if you're wearing all those hats, is you've got to stay really focused on ensuring that you're making the most of your time. It's incredibly easy to spend time on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, because that's much more interesting than writing a client proposal.
Or even just answering your email.
Yeah, or your email, but just do it in 15 minutes. I think that's the key.
Yeah, I like that. So know your numbers,
Mm-hmm.
what you're doing with your time, whether you're doing makeup, setup, or cleanup.
Yep.
Anything we need to set up?
Yeah, so for setup, was that your question? What do you do for setup?
We're talking what the systems that we need to set up. So
so other things I think you've got to do is you know your numbers, you know your operations, you've got to know your association. NSA is full of phenomenal resources for free. So you've got Speaker Magazine online, you've got VOE. Don't just listen to the current VOE. Michael Hoffman's doing a brilliant job. But go back and listen to old editions. I am constantly listening to things from Brian Walter, from Theo Andros. You know, go and have a look at previous years because each chair had their own flavor. The thing I loved about Theo's year, it was very business-oriented. Mm-hmm. So go back and listen to old VOEs. When you get your Speaker Magazine, if you get the physical edition, have a look through it and think, what do I really need to pay attention to? Get involved in your local chapter. Your local chapter is full of brilliance. There are so many resources there. Obviously, they have academy programs with webinars like this. But I would highly recommend you consider attending at least one of the events, the annual convention or the smaller events like the winter conference or the labs that they run. But you've got to know what's available to you already. Don't be scared of picking up the phone, dropping a note, sending a tweet, writing a message to someone on Facebook that you admire and just ask them for some time, for some advice. My whole career I've done this. I still do this today. You've got to know the people in your association. If you really want to get good at things, you've got to know who's the best. For years, I wanted to make my keynote better, so I reached out to Lou Heckler. I went and spent time with Lou Heckler. He's the best speech coach that I know. And so, but I did my due diligence. I think you've got to really know what our association has on offer, and you've got to do your due diligence. One of the big mistakes I made when I first became a speaker was, well, there were so many, but let's just, one of the first things I did was, someone said buy a book, I did. Do a program, I did. Buy this audio program, I did. Go to this particular course, I did. Go and attend this conference, I did. I spent zillions of dollars on stuff without doing my due diligence. So one of my lessons for you is really research and give yourself 24 hours. You don't have to buy the book immediately. You don't have to sign up for the program immediately. Give yourself 24 hours to decide, is that really going to grow my business? Is it really going to grow my practice? Think about due diligence with our association and decide. Don't just get caught up in the moment. Decide if it's the right partnership for you.
Well, and the Facebook group that we have for the Academy is a great resource for that. If somebody has recommended you do something, ask about it on the Facebook group. You know,
I think
there may be somebody who has done that and can say, oh yeah, that is a fabulous, Lou Heckler? Heck yeah. If you need to improve your keynote, that is what you need to work with. But we also may be able to say,
yeah. Patrick,
Yeah.
you can vouch for Lou.
but also it may be you're not ready for that yet.
That's a really good point, Eliz. I think what happens is there's not always a fit, right? And it could be that people are offering things that are more advanced than where you are in your journey. Or it could be that they're not at the level you want them to be, because in our association there's such a different depth of offering and a very diverse group of people. And so the personalities may not gel, their experience may not be what you want. So please, I beg of you, don't just know the numbers, don't just know the operations, but know the association and do your research. Make sure you find out, are those people really doing what they're saying they're doing? You know, I had the privilege of serving NSA DC on the weekend, and I stood up in front of this group of people, and I said, you know, if your life is a mess, then don't tell me that you are a life coach, right? There's no credibility there, right? So please understand that you are going to meet some phenomenal people in our association and very, very talented, all with your best intentions, right? But do your due diligence. Please know what is available from our association, and it is truly my American family. You know, obviously I'm not from around here, and so for me, NSA is my family, and that's what's going to happen is if you invest in those relationships, they become your friends and your family. It's like no other association on this planet.
And that's very true, and especially when you go to your first national event. It is overwhelming.
Sure.
But if you go in with a question to be answered, that is a great way. And a very I totally stole that from Sally Hogshead, because that's how she met so many people. She asked a really good question, because if you're approaching somebody and just sort of glom onto them and say, oh, can I pick your brain? Most of us will be like, oh, I don't think so.
That's like one of the ugliest phrases on this planet. Like, I have visions of, like, the gorillas in Sydney Zoo where they, like, pick at each other. It's disgusting. Please don't ever ask me to pick my brain. Now, what I say to people is, I would say to Patrick Henry, you know, you are so funny, Patrick. Oh, my God, I love your videos. I listen to you on Sirius Radio. May I tap into your brilliance for 15 minutes?
That's an excellent way. Right. Or what's your best tip for making a story more funny?
More funny, yeah. And I think on the Facebook group, it's not our Speaker Academy one, but someone posted about a newbie at convention. And last year, Noah Ricken wrote a blog for me that I put on my site about being new to convention and what do you need to think about. And then I did a video on that. So if there's anyone watching this, you can jump across to my website and you'll see all that there.
And that's easy to find because you just put her name in with the .com behind it and you can find her.
There's only one named James, that's right.
There's one. So any other systems that we need to set up? Know your numbers, know your operations, know your association.
Yeah, what I would suggest too is know your advocates. So you need to create an advocate system. So I have advocates in business and I have advocates in NSA. And so your responsibility is to have really strong relationships with those advocates. So I've found that some of my best speaking engagements have come from friends that have recommended me. Patrick has recommended me a number of times and we've had the privilege of doing things together. be aware of who your advocates are in your business, the business connections you have, but also in NSA. And so I think you've really got to earn that right. But there are relationships that you want to develop. And so I've had so many people generously refer me, and I like to do the same thing. Whenever I finish a speech, I always make sure before I go onto the stage, I've dropped one person's name. When I come off the stage, I always give the meeting planner 2 people's names. So what I've done is I've then given opportunities to fellow speakers who can follow me the next year, so that the meeting planner then goes, wow, it's not that she just did a great job, it's that she also is a resource for me. So know your advocates, develop a really tight community of people that you feel comfortable referring, because you don't want to take every job that comes your way. You know, Robert Bradford, another person in NSA, has this great term, and he says, don't be a comma speaker, as in I speak about teamwork, comma, customer service, comma, you know, strategic planning, comma, right? Don't be a comma speaker. Okay, know what you're really good at, own that, but then for the other work that's not suited to you, give it to someone else, because that is another thing that I learned in my career.
I'd like to comment on that as well, because I think if you want to be referred by other speakers, or if you want to work with bureaus, I think the best way to do that is to refer them. If you have an opportunity that you think a speaker that you admire would be a good fit for, refer them, and you've created an emotional debt that they will pay back. I've heard bureaus say that some of their best speakers will give the job, let it be administered by the bureau, let them have the commission, and you've created a relationship. So be proactive if you want to work with those folks.
Yeah, and Patrick, you're really good at this. You're always recommending other speakers, but I know too, because you're so good on stage, people are really comfortable to recommend you. And your bureaus often ask you, right, who do you know that might be good for this? Because you're good at it, right?
We're looking for funny women.
And it's good to know funny women.
That's right. I've got to jump. I'll go pick up a kid.
All right. Nice to see you.
So, and I think that's really smart about developing those relationships. I have seen new to the association speakers make some mistakes in that realm, where they will go to a very experienced speaker and ask to be introduced to their clients, or and I think it's just a misunderstanding, because we're always talking about how giving our association is and how people are willing to hold out a hand and help you along, which is true, but you don't get those referrals until you have earned them. It is not something you ask for, it is something that you earn.
I have been very blessed to recommend some of my favorite people into my clients, but these are my clients, which means they're extension of my reputation. So I won't ever bring a speaker into my client unless I love and adore them, know that they'll represent me, are an extension of my brand, and I know they'll deliver. And I've had people in my clients who have just hit it out of the park because they don't want to let me down.
Oh, that's absolutely true.
Yeah, so be aware that when you are making those connections, I think you've got to earn the right. You've got to earn the right to be recommended. And but I would suggest to you that you invest. Start investing now. Start watching people. Start reading their books. Start understanding. If there are people in the association you admire, find out how they think. Reach out to them, see if you can grab a drink or a coffee together while they're at convention, while they're at the winter conference. But it's just like 15 minutes. Like, don't ask them for a lot of time, because one of the other things that happens at our events is it's like a family reunion. We only get to see each other once or twice a year, and so people all want to see the people that they love and adore. So when you're new, what you want to do is just find some people that you can hang with. Always go to Chris always does a brilliant session on return on investment for the convention. Always go to the first time, as Michael Goldberg and Glenna Salisbury in the past have done a brilliant job of that. But wherever possible, go to all those things so that you can meet other people who it might be their first event as well.
Right, and attending the Cavett Institute before convention starts is a great way to make
Yeah. What I noticed last year too, Liz, was it wasn't just people who were newer to our industry. Right. There were some really established speakers sitting in the back taking lots of notes. So you get to hang out with some pretty cool people at Cavett. I loved it.
Right, and I've met I've been at Cabot Institute a couple of times, and I always meet interesting people. And then for the rest of the convention, you're like, hey, I saw you, and now you have this special little connection.
Right.
It's some of my best friends I met that first time I went to convention in the Cabot Institute. So
Definitely.
definitely do that. And it's, if you're an academy, that's just part of what you've already paid for. So why wouldn't you attend?
Make the most of it. It's a really amazing day. I've loved it when I've done it.
It's excellent. All right, so we know our numbers, we know our operations, we know our association, and we know our advocates. Anything else?
You gotta know the checklist you need. I believe there's a couple checklists that are vital. You need to know, like, what I call BDA, so before, during, and after. So you need a checklist of what you want to do before an event, during an event, and after an event. So the first thing you can do is create a checklist of BDA. What I also believe is, in our practice, we have checklists for travel. That means I have a checklist for everything. There are certain places I like to be on the plane. There are certain hotels I like to stay in. There are certain requirements I have. And it's not to sound like I am a diva, but I sort of am when I travel, because I want to make sure that I'm not thinking about any of that, so my focus is on the climb. So have checklists, know your checklist. Have checklists for when you're going to write a proposal for a client. Have templated proposals so that all you have to do is really tweak the details. Have checklists in place for things like, we always send a gift to our clients after we've done a speech, and so Maria does it on a certain day of the week. It goes with a certain note. Men get something, women get something different. Like, we have all of that systemized. So this goes back to knowing your operations, but it also goes back to know your checklists. The more checklists you can have in place, the easier it is, because then you don't have to think about it. Obviously, I'm all about productivity, so I only want to think about something once and then be able to leverage it often. Now, there's great apps in the world. Wunderlist is one of my favorites that I use for lists, and so find an app.
And it's wonder as in I wonder list.
But it's W-U-N-D-E-R, Wonder. So Wunderlist is I'm a Mac person, I'm sure there's a PC equivalent, but think about the kind of checklist that you need, and then have ways, like, also know who else needs access to that. Now, I use Google for everything. So we use Google Calendar, I use Google Mail, and it means Maria from my office can access it and my husband can access it as well. So think about the systems and who needs access to you as well. So in your checklist, think about who else needs to be aware of this. For example, as soon as I land at the airport or while I'm in the car, when I get to the hotel room, I always shoot a really short video on my iPhone for the meeting planner, and I say, I'm here, I'm so excited, thank you for my room, I got in safe and sound, and I text it to the meeting planner. We do that every single time. The meeting planners love it because their biggest concern is, did my speaker arrive, right? You are but one of the 50,000 details they have to think about. But the meeting planners love it, and it's just a little thing we do. It takes me a couple of seconds to do it. So it's part of the checklist. We always do this, right? So please be aware that there's ways that you can systemize the everyday in your practice to allow you to truly rock the platform, so when you stand on stage, all the details have been taken care of, and all you can do is deliver your best speech that day.
Right, because if you're all mired in the setup and the cleanup, if you're worried about, did I send this out, and did that check come in, and because you're recreating the wheel every single time, you don't ever get to that good content delivery piece that's really important.
Yeah, there's a phenomenal chick in our association by the name of Ruby, and Ruby is the incoming president. I have never seen a more detailed operations manual than Ruby's. It blew my mind. Like, I thought we were good, but holy guacamole, she's like good on steroids. So I would recommend that you check out Ruby Newell-Lagner. She has a brilliant operations manual, which I think you can buy, but she's crazy smart, and her operations manual is truly the best I've ever seen in the speaking industry. But there are people out there who can help you.
She's going to need it next year when she's traveling the country as our
yes, president.
Yeah. All right, so we know our numbers, we know our operations, our association, our advocates, and our checklist. Anything else we need to know?
It sounds crazy, and this is not to sound all woo-woo, but you need to know yourself. And by this, I mean this. You've got to know, when am I most productive? I happen to be most productive in the morning, right? So I get most of my strategic work done before lunchtime. Know yourself means know what food you need, how much you have to exercise, know how you like to travel, know when you are going to want to talk to clients, when you're not. You've got to know yourself so you can manage your calendar. For example, in my practice, I do not talk to any clients before 9 o'clock. And the reason for that is 9 o'clock East Coast allows me to get up, work out, get ready. And if I have to be hair and makeup ready for a Skype call, I can be by 9 o'clock. So you've got to know yourself. You've got to know what works for you. Now, it could be that you are brilliant late in the evening and you might be better doing strategic work at night. But I know myself that my best strategic time is in the morning. So that means that's when I dedicate to writing my blogs, creating my easing, creating new content, working on my speeches, having those important calls with clients. They happen before lunch. And then after lunch is more about maintenance, routine. So think about, are you a morning person? Because if you are, you're most productive between the hours of 7 a.m. and 1 p.m. You want to do your strategic stuff then. But if you're an afternoon, a night owl, you're going to be more productive between 2 and 8 p.m. So knowing that about yourself will allow you to run your practice differently. So you just got to know yourself and what you like, and understand you're not in this alone. Most of us have someone who loves and adores us, and we share our life with another person or a furry person because they're just as demanding. So you might have pets in your life who want your attention, but you've got someone who loves you, and so you've got to think about, this is truly a lifestyle that we choose, and that lifestyle, many of us, takes us away from people we love. So my philosophy is that I do what I love with people I love in places I love. That's how we run our practice. And so it took us a long time to get to that place, but if I have to be away from the people I love, I really want to love who I'm with. So that means it's important to choose your clients really well, and choose the way you travel, and choose where you want to stay. And when we start in this business, often someone tells us, this is where you're staying, or this is what you have to do. So always know what your end game is. Where do you want to be? If you want to be that $15,000 speaker, ask yourself, does this make me a $15,000 speaker? Constantly ask yourself the question so you can be filtering the decisions. So you've got to know yourself.
That's very smart. Okay, we know our numbers, our operations, our association, our advocates, our checklist, and ourself. Anything else?
I'm sure there's about a bazillion other things, but they're the ones that I prepared for today.
And I think that is brilliant, just brilliant, because so often speakers are new to our association. Speakers are asking, "Where's the roadmap?" Mm-hmm. And I think you just gave them one. That if you put all of these pieces in place, you are going to set yourself up to be successful, which is exactly what I asked you to share, which is awesome. Love to deliver what we promised. Now, we have a very short amount of time left, and I apologize, because the brilliance of what, like that was brilliant, but what is amazingly brilliant is the next part of what you wanted to share, and maybe we just need to schedule more time with you at some point, or maybe people just need to come and hear you speak the next time. But how to get that stuff out of our heads and into the world and the money in our palms.
So monetizing your ideas, I think we could definitely do an additional hangout on that. I think that's a great idea. But very quickly, what I would say to you is the first place to start is that everything you're about is message. So you want to start with message first. What is your unique message into the world? What is your thought leadership? And you need to uncover that. That's quite a process. But the first place I would say is think about take one idea that you have, and then maybe rule your page into 3 places just like that across the page. In the middle of the page, try and articulate your idea in 1 to 2 sentences. What's your concept? What is a statement that outlines what it is you do? And then what I'd like you to think about at the bottom of the third of the page is think about what content do I have to support that idea. Now the left brain needs statistics and processing rhetorical questions, and the right brain is looking for stories and analogies, case studies, ancient history. So think about what content do you have to support that middle concept. And then at the top level, think about contextually, what does that look like? Can you create a model, a diagram to explain your idea? That's going to appeal to the left brain. And then do you have a metaphor or a way that it's like something that's going to appeal to the right brain? Now, I teach this process. We call it pink sheets. That's because the first time we did it was printed on a pink piece of paper, but it's called an intellectual property snapshot. So what I want you to think about is, what is the context, concept, and content behind all of the different ideas you have? Once you can get depth to your ideas, I believe you can commercialize them very differently. So if you want to take an idea, get it out of your head, write down on a piece of paper, what do I know about this idea? What's my point? What stuff do I know to support my point? And what's the big picture behind it? And when you do that, you start to look at your ideas very differently.
That, as I said, is the super brilliant part. And I think we do need to spend more time on that. And I thank you so much. You are, honestly, one of the most generous people in our association. You give and you are brilliant, and I appreciate it. I know we all appreciate it. I can't wait to see you in Las Vegas.
I know. The winter conference is going to be amazing. If you haven't signed, then just sign up. Take my word for it.
I know.
What's cool about it, we were talking about this before everyone went live, that John has pulled in speakers that are working speakers. These are people who are making lots and lots of money. The reason you probably don't know their names is because they're out there making the money. Like, the reality is these are working professionals. I can't wait to hang out with them and to truly tap into their brains. So I highly recommend the winter conference.
Well, and I know Lindsay's going to talk about some opportunities coming up, including the winter conference. But the winter conference just got, what, 5 times better than it was before?
Well, you know, I mean, a lot of these resources I think that we have for the winter conference were pieces that were already part of the program, but the way that we've set them up and packaged them and made them accessible is 10 million times better than we ever anticipated, because we were looking at our archives as we were kind of closing out the end of the year and realized, you know what, we have these amazing member benefits. Let's talk about it a little bit, because already the people taking advantage and making the investment, we want the learning to go that much further. Because this is a year in which you want to start the world off right. How better to do it than gathering with 200 to 300 of your closest friends and learning how to be brilliant. So February 6th through 8th in sunny Las Vegas at the new Tropicana is our winter conference. Through the end of this week, we are holding on to a extended kind of bonus schedule where you're going to get all of Perform 2014, which was our last year's annual conventions live stream. So that's an additional nearly 25 hours of content of just amazing deep dives from the breakout perspective, as well as people featured on our main stage. Additionally, we've got a couple of sessions that were supposed to be pre-conference at the winter conference, one that is a sales system done by Ed Robinson, CSP, down by Houston, who's amazing, has been having this as a practice for years. We also have the online presence. It's kind of a fundamentals plus question, if you will, that our very own Liz Green, Phil Gerbachek, Neen James, many names are going to be doing some in-person, one-on-one with your whole online presence to get some of the theory and strategy out there. And then as a follow-up, continuing month by month until we get on site in Washington, D.C., and learning more about your particular online presence and how you can continue to make it the best at it. Because really, no one does phone ads anymore, y'all. They're all online. We want that to be the biggest pop, just like the things that Neen was sharing with today. In addition, after that, April 9th through 11th in Manhattan. So if you're a part of the East Coast zone, we'd love to have you join you at the Media Lab. We're about to publish that schedule. We have some phenomenal speakers. We've got top leadership coming from CBS Radio, CBS Local News, the Wall Street Journal, MSNBC, producers coming that book on all of the major networks, both local, regional, and the international. We're talking access. This is something where if you don't come, because none of this can be recorded, the things they're going to be sharing, I actually had an NDA sent to me because they don't want you to know unless you're in that room. So what we're sharing is really the secrets to what it takes to formulate a media plan, to pitch to the media, to get online and say, is that what's going to be appropriate for me, and then to take it and explode your business. And then finally, the capstone of all of our year is going to be joining in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, July 18th through the 21st, where we're going to be celebrating Influence 2015, our annual convention. And we have an amazing breakout schedule. We're finalizing all of our main stage. We've got features for our foundation, features for the CAVIT, features from the community. Really and truthfully, if you do not make any other event, although I suggest you come, do not miss DC. It's going to be amazing. And we're almost ready to announce 2015 through 2016 too. So really and truthfully, this investment you've made in NSA is one of the best ways and do's investments you could to scale your business. Well, at least I think so, but I'm biased.
Yeah,
I
agree.
So I think that's a lot of the stuff we've got going on. Check us out at nsaspeaker.org/attend. We're going to put some more information in your hub. We'll be sending out the recording from today's webinar that Neen shared with us, as well as getting next month's on the board. So don't forget to save the date, and we will see you very soon, shortly after our Las Vegas convention. And again, we're so excited to have you, Janice. Thank you again, Neen, for sharing. Liz, for your time today. And let us know as the questions come in.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Privileged to serve. See you guys.